Hey kids, welcome to lesson 5.2, Writing Constructors. In Unit 2, we learned how to create objects using constructors. Objects are created in programs by declaring a variable of the class and using the keywords new, followed by a class to a constructor. Constructors set the initial values for an object's instance variables. For example, here's how we create world, turtle, and person object. Kids, you've seen these before. These are our old turtle friends and our new person friend right here. As you can see, there's really 3 ways to do it. As we go down here, that's going to be the point of the lesson. In a new class, constructors are usually written after the instance variable and before any methods. They typically start with public and then the name of the class, public class name. Unlike other methods, they do not have a return type, not even void, after the access modifier public. They can take parameters specified in parentheses for the data, which is used to initialize the instant variables. We have an example down here, kids. And when they talk about return type, they mean implementing a part of a program. Think back to the print on the last program with the person. That was an example of that. Constructors have the same name as the class. Constructors have no return type. So just remember that, kids. Classes usually have more than one constructor. There are usually at least 2. A constructor that takes no parameters and a constructor that takes all the parameters necessary for initializing all of the instant variables. That's all or nothing, kids. The attributes of an object and their values at a given time define the object's state. The constructors initialize the object state by assigning initial values to the instance variable that the object has in its attributes. Here are 2 constructors that could be written for the person class. Notice the first one initializes name, email, phone number to an empty setting as their default values. Most programmers use these little quotes as a default value for string variables and 0 for the default value for ints and doubles. And that's just a nice little hint, kids. So as we usually set stuff to 0, we're going to do the same with strings, just using those little parentheses. If there are no constructors written for a class, Java provides a no argument default constructor where the instant variables are set to their default values. For int and double variables, the default value is 0. And for string and other objects, the default is null. However, if you do write at least one constructor, Java will not generate the default constructor for you. So you would write at least one constructor with no parameters and one with many parameters. We have a test your knowledge. Which ones are the constructor here? Well, again, those are the things of building it. So that's our name. And then we are setting them equal to each other. So it is all these 4. What best describes the purpose of a class's constructor? Well, does it determine the amount of space needed for an object and creates the object? No, I don't think we even talked about that. Names the object? No, I don't think it really does that either. Return to free storage all the memory used by the instance of this class? Well, again, kids, we haven't talked about that. Initializes the instant variables in the object? Well, that's exactly what it does, kids. What is that one? The following class defines a fraction with the instant variable numerator and denominator. It uses 2 constructors. Note that this constructor sets the default instant variable values to 1 rather than 0. So we don't end up with a divide by 0. That's a big no-no, kids. Try to guess what it will print before you run hint. Remember to start with the main method. Well, let's see, kids. We have our class fraction. We have 2 integers, numerator and denominator. Looks like numerator set to 1, denominator is set to 1. When we come down here, we're setting numerator to int numerator, denominator to int denominator. So we have a new constructor here, fraction, which has these two parts to it. We have this new method, fraction, which has these two constructors to it. And when we go down here, what we're going to print when we call it a print is whatever the numerator is divided by the denominator. We created a new instance of fraction called f1. It is empty, so that's null. It's going to go to the initial ones here, so that should be 1 divided by 1. f2 is 1 divided by 2, so we should get 1 divided by 2. Let's see if I'm right, kids. One divided by 2 and 1 divided by 1. Those were our null values. And then we gave 2 of them for our parameter, and those were the numerator and denominator. Then we printed off the numerator and denominator. The following class defines a car with the instant variable model and year. For example, a Honda 2010 car. However, some of the code is missing. Fill in the code for the two constructors that are numbered 1 and 2. And fill in the code to call the constructor in the main method numbered 3. The car1 object should test the first constructor with default values. Car2 object should test the second constructor to test a Honda 2010 car. Kids, how'd they know what I drive? Run your program, I'll see if it'll work. Well, let's go down through our code and work. We're making a new class, car. It's going to have 2 instant variables of the model and the year. Honda 2010, that looks pretty good. We are doing a new public car, so we have to, in this one, set our instant variables. That's going to be model, which is going to be equal to, well, what does up here say? Our default should be a 2010 Honda. No, that's the second one. We have to come up with our own default methods here. Well, let's put in the car that I wish I drive, kids, a Chevy. And the year, we are going to do 1984. Kids, I'm going to let you guess what that is. Leave it down in the comments. Oh, yeah. We'll see if anybody in class can guess. So our default values for car are going to be the model is going to be a Chevy, and the year is going to be 1984. Now we have to set our instant variables to our parameters. That means we're just going to do model equal int model. Year is going to equal int year. And those are just setting those to the parameters. We have our test right there. We don't have to do anything to that. And now we just have to create our 2 new ones. Well, the first one, we're going to create a new instance of car, and that had to be, remember kids, oh, the first one should be default. So we're just going to put that there because that's our empty or default values. The second one should be a 2010 Honda. Remember kids, model and then year. That means this should be a new car, and that's going to be a Honda. And the year is going to be 2010. Sweet ride, kids. And then we're going to print car 1, car 2. Well, let's see if I'm right. Whoop. We do got an issue. Looks like one of these need to be capitalized. Remember, kids, you have to call the class capitalized. Oh, another thing, kids. Remember, my years don't have quotes. 2 errors, Mr. Rhodes. Let's try this one more time. Default one right here. Well, that printed off my 1984 Chevy. Try to guess, kids. And then our new instance of car, that's our Honda 2010. Looks like we had to do model in 2019. We know what we're doing. If we wanted to fix it to that, kids, we would just come up here. We would take away our model, and then we can just put 2019. Now we pass, but we don't have such a sweet ride. Constructors are used to set up the initial state of an object by initializing instance variables. The examples above have instant variables that are primitive types, but you can have other objects, reference types, as instant variables. For example, a person class could have an address object as an instant variable, and an address class could have a string instance variable for the street, city, and state. Advanced AP topic warning. When you pass object references as parameters to constructors or methods, they become aliases for the original object and can change it. If a constructor has an object instance variable, it can copy the reference objects in the parameter using the new and the constructor of the reference object like below, so it does not change the state of the original object. You're going to see more examples of this coming up, so we're not going to get too much into this, kids. Really, what that's saying is watch how you're passing it, because you can change something up here by accident. We have a programming challenge. We're going to write student class below that has 4 instant variables, and we're going to write at least 3 different constructors, one that has no parameters and initializes the instant variables to default values, one that has 4 parameters to set the instant variables, and one that has 1 parameter for the most important instant variable and uses defaults for the other. We're going to add a print method that uses a system.outPrint to print off the instant variables. And then we're going to add a main method that constructs at least 3 student objects using 3 different constructors and then calls their print method. Woo! Seems like a lot, kids. It's really not. And really all we have to do is just look up here and go down in the same order that's here. Kids, let's work through this code here. Remember what we're doing. As we come down, we can remember it. The directions are right here, kids. First thing we need to do is always, we need to initialize our instance variables. And we're just going to make 4 of those, kids. And it's going to be private string. And we're going to do one is name. Let's do a private int. Let's do a grade level. Let's do another private int. This one will be age. And finally, because we need 4 of these, kids, let's do something fun. A double is a GPA. Those are our 4 instance variables. Next thing we have to do here is we have to set some initial values. Let's tab in a little. Let's go public, and this is going to be under student. And what this is going to be, let's have some curly cues here to lock this in. We're going to set our name to something blank. We'll just say a new student. We're going to set grade level. Let's do 9, kids, my favorite grade. We're going to do age equal to 13. And then our GPA is going to be equal to my GPA in high school, kids, all 1.2. Whoa. And what that's doing here is just getting our initial values for the variables we just created. So we created variables, then we are just creating some default of values for them. Next, we're going to have to write this constructor here, right, kids? This big long thing. And the constructor is going to be another public, right? So just like before, student, this time we're going to initialize it. We're going to populate it with some stuff. Well, we're going to do a string int name. Is it starting to sound familiar? Our integer initial grade level. Another int initial age. I think that was all lowercase, kids. And a double. And that's our int GPA. That there is just setting up our constructors. We got to tell it what all that means. So our name is going to be set equal to our initial name, INIT. Just make sure we're getting our spelling right, kids. Grade level is going to be equal to int grade level. Our age is going to be equal to our int age. And finally, our GPA is going to be equal to our int GPA. I'm sure, kids, I'm going to have a million spelling errors here, but we'll see. This part really is what we need at the end, kids. So I'm going to Control C and Control V it. We're going to come back to that in a minute. Next thing we have to do is worry about what we're printing out. And kids, we have a whole video on this if you don't know. This is just our function for our print. And this is going to print off student name. And then we're going to do a little quote, a plus, and we're going to call that there. We're going to do another system.out.println grade level. And that's plus grade level. Let's do system.out.print. And this time it's going to be age. Oops, forgot that one. And then we're going to plus age. And then system print. Last one. Your GPA is. And then we have that. And then we're going to put GPA. Woo! Whoop. Don't forget your semicolon there. And then anytime we call up to our print, we should get these all four printed off. Woo! Kids, this is the part where we need this right here, because we need to fulfill this. And really all we're doing is calling the ones above. Let's start off with the easy one. We're going to create a new student, S1. That's going to be equal to a new student. We're just going to do whatever the defaults are, right? And then we're going to do one parameter and the rest defaults. So on this one, we're going to do student1 S2 is going to be equal to new student. And then we'll add Mr. Rhodes. Oh, we need that in quotes. Mr. Rhodes in there. And then finally, a student S3 is going to be equal to a new student. And this one's going to have 4 parameters. Kids, I'm going to use my favorite student, who I am 100% guaranteeing is not watching this video. Well, that is our wonderful student, Casey. They are a senior. Their age, Casey is a mystical being. I'm going to say 48. In GPA, I bet you he has a 6.5, kids, 6.2. And that is our parameters for 4. Now we just got to print it off. That's pretty easy, kids. We're just going to do s1.print, s2.print. Woo! And then s3.print as well, kids. We'll put that in its right spot down here where it should be. Clean this up a little. And I think that's everything. Woo, I think that's everything we need, kids. Let's run it and see our spelling errors. Grade level equal. Let's see where that's at right there. Well, that's our first error. Let's see what else we can get, kids. Well, let's go over here to line 26 is our first one. This should be an integer age, so that is int age. And down here, this is a lowercase, so that's that one. Let's save and run and see it now, kids. We're going to get this error, and I bet you no matter what we do, we're going to get it. And you're probably getting it too, kids. Let's work around it for a second. I think it'll help us learn what is happening there. Let's just comment out S2 and save and run. Everything's printing fine. Well, kids, remember up here, it said constructors either take no parameters or they take all the parameters. We only have two options. This was an important statement here, kids. And that holds true all the way down here. When we call to roads, for just Mr. Rhodes, we're not giving it its other parameters. If I just did a bunch of commas like this, it would work. So we're going to have to make a special little class for this one. So I'm going to go up here to my public student, and I'm going to create another one here. I'm going to go a public student. And this is just going to be the string int name. And what I'm just going to do is set name equal to int name. It did say that it wants the one parameter and the rest of them to be the default one. So we're just going to take these grade 9, all that stuff here, and we're going to put it down here. This has to be in some curly cues. I think that is it, unless I spelled something wrong again, kids, which is always a possibility. Let's see, fingers crossed. Hey, our code's running, kids. The blank default here is new student. Kids, that would drive me crazy. Capitalize all that. And then grade levels 9, 13, GPA is 1.2. This poor freshman, kids. Mr. Rhodes with just one parameter and the rest defaults. And then finally our 4 parameters down there. And we learned a valuable lesson, kids. Your program either runs all of the constructors or none of them. So just keep that in mind, kids. A lot's going to come up quite a bit. We have a little summary here. Constructors are used to set the initial state of an object, which includes initial values for all instance variables. When no constructor is written, Java provides a no argument default constructor, and instance variables are set to their default value. 0 for ints and doubles, null for objects like strings. Constructor parameters are local variables to the constructor and provide data to initialize instance variables. Well, kids, normally we'd be done, but guess what? We got to practice AP questions. Let's look at our first one here. We have considered definition of cat class below. The class uses the instance variables is senior to indicate whether a cat is old enough to be considered a senior cat or not. Which of the following statements will create a cat object that represents a cat that is considered a senior cat? So senior cat, and that is if the age is greater than 10. Well, Let's go down here. Cat 1, we have a new cat Oliver, which is 7. And if we look up here, age 7, well, that's not over it, so that's not going to work. We come down here for the next one, cat Max 15. Well, it is over the age of 15. Kids, this is a little trick one here because you're thinking, wow, that cat is above 15 and is a classic Rhodes mistake, kids. It is, but it's in quotes. That's getting passed off as a string when it should be an int. So that one isn't true. The next one, spots and true. Well, kids, second parameter can't be a Boolean, so that's not right. Whiskers and 10. Well, that's above 10 and it's greater than or equal to, so that could work. And then the third one is senior. Well, that's nothing, kids. That's not going to work. So I think it's number D. Am I right? Yes, I am, kids. Consider the following class definition. Each object of the class cat will store the cat's name as name, the cat's age as age, and the number of kittens that it has is kittens. Which of the following code segments are found in a class other than cat can be used to create a cat that is 5 years old with no kittens? Woo! Who doesn't love kittens, kids? We have 2 different ones that can be fulfilled here. One that has a 3 or one that has a 2. And kids, if you're looking, it should be name, age, kittens. And if we go down here, you can see for 1, sprinkles 5, 0 kittens. Well, that would fulfill that one. Lucky 0, 5. We can't have the age 0 and the kittens 5, kids. And cat C Luna 5, well, this one fulfills this method because you only need a 2 and it passes off the third parameter. Well, this one had all 3. This one had 2. This one is 1 and 3. So I'm going to look down here, find that one. I think that's it. Hey, good job, kids. This is a long one, kids. The following statement appears in a method in a class other than cat. It is intended to create a new cat object C with its attributes set to black and true. Which of the following can be used to replace the missing constructor code in the class definition so the object C below is correctly created? We have a new C cat, black and true. Kids, what we're trying to get is this right here. We're trying to get the word true here, okay? Just remember that while we're building through these. So the first one here, well, I can get rid of anything that says true, kids, because it's not going to be passing that along. So I know A, B, and C are not going to be it. So we're left with B and E. And if you look here, this one has, again, the same kind of thing. We have our part here set to color. And what we really need is it set to these, set to C, set to H. So our string C and R is hungry is set to H. And we're just passing off all the right parameters here, kids. So all we're looking for is the right one that passes off all the right things. Should be E. Let's see if I'm right, kids. Yay! Oh, that's it. Kids, hopefully you found this video helpful. As always, if you have any questions, come see me. Otherwise, I'll see you on the next video. See you later, kids. Bye. Bye.